Stop it, you're throwing me off. I am Norm Wilner, Senior International Programmer for Canada here at the festival, and I have been waiting literally my entire career to say these next words. Please welcome David Cronenberg.
I'm so glad you showed up. You never know.
There was a sense that people were excited to see this. Even after Cannes, we were all like, I can't go to Cannes, I can't see it there. And after the word came out on what it's about and how it is about it, it's so profoundly sad. It's a film that's in communication, just as Crimes of the Future was 2 years ago, with all of your other work somehow. It just reaching back. The ending of this film strikes me as the ending of Naked Lunch, right? Welcome to Anexia. You're never leaving. But you made a movie about how work will not save you from grief. And the question I wanted to start with was the jump from Crimes of the Future to this, where Crimes of the Future is a film about humanity no longer being able to feel pain and anything being possible. And here, pain is the only thing that unites all the characters, that connects everyone, and then leads them further and further down. And then there's the other fact, which is that Crimes of the Future, as you were saying, was written quite a while ago, and this is a newer work. So can you talk about the gulf, the 20 years between those two movies that came out 2 years apart?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Crimes of the Future, we made that movie 20 years after I wrote the script. And I really didn't change the script. It seemed, I think we talked about it, producer Robert Lantos said, have you read your script? Your old script, Crimes of the Future. Excuse me. I've been talking a lot lately, maybe too much. And I said, I'm sure that what I wrote 20 years ago, because it is basically a sci-fi movie in its own way, it must be completely irrelevant now. And he said, the classic words, no, it's more relevant than ever. So we made that movie. But it came out of a very different time in my life, of course, 20 years ago, and a very different part of my life from The Shrouds, which was written relatively recently. And I think that's really the difference, basically. They both discuss something that I felt is real and that people feel, but from different moments in their life.
Yeah, and the focus on the body in these last two films, on what we become and what we can make of ourselves. And that feels to me like it's reaching back in another way too. I mean, I'm a fan. I see every one of your films with the full knowledge of what's come before, and I'm sure most of the people in this room have the same relationship to your work. You were hailed as the Prince of Body Horror before people even had the phrase body horror, before people understood what it was. And these two films seem like intertwined in what's possible with digital effects and what you can do that you couldn't do in the 80s or 90s with prosthetics, but also what you can dread, what you can teach us as an audience member to fear, the mutilation and decay of the body. And that's Crimes of the Future. And now here's a film about wanting someone who wants so badly to stay with his loved one that he's devised a way for other people to stay with theirs in the same way. And the obsession that technology eventually betrays you, it doesn't do the thing you want it to do. That goes all the way back to the Brood and Scatters and The Fly. But this doesn't feel like a valedictory statement either. It doesn't feel like the end of anything. It just feels like where you are right now, as you said. And I was just wondering if you could speak to that.
Well, it's more general than the specifics. I mean, in Crimes of the Future, we have the mantra, body is reality. You have a performance artist whose whole performance art is based on that idea that because of the way the physiology of the human body is how we perceive reality, so that, you know, your dog is in the same room as you are, but the reality for that dog is totally different from your reality, and part of that, and it's all body, it's all physiology, how we see, how we detect color, what we can smell and so on. But so, to me, it's basically an existentialist approach to life. If you think that body is reality, body is the absolute reality, then you have to accept that death is real and it's absolute, and that after you die, there is only oblivion. It's what you experienced before you were born. You're gone. That's very hard for people to accept. And of course, when you lose a loved one, you often hear, and you certainly think, this can't be true. It's impossible that this person is dead. It's impossible that this person will never be in my life again. And so that understanding it was the instigation of the Shrouds, which is somebody who says, well, I can't accept that, and because my relationship with my wife was so physical, it's a different kind of loss. A lot of people, when my wife, 43 years, died, would say, well, you know, my father died 3 years ago, and I understand the grief and so on. And you want to say, but you probably don't say, depending on who this person is, yes, but you never made love to your father, you know. Problem. I mean, times have changed. But if you hadn't, then the relationship between a person and their partner in life, with whom they make love many times during the course of their time together, the loss of that body is incredibly powerful. And it is not a loss that is the same as other losses. And one of the things that I found in my own life, and you can feel resonances of it in this movie, is that all grief is different. When my wife died, I read all the grief books. You know, there was John Didion's book, The Year of Magical Thinking, and there was C.S. Lewis's book, and there are many books that are about grief and the personal stories of loss. And I read them all, and I didn't relate to any of them. And I realized that my grief was very specific to me, to my wife, to the time, the culture that we live in. And so, and that is, it makes it special in a very horrible way, actually. So that's just my ramblings about the genesis, let's say, of the Shrouds. Here you have a man who, because he's an entrepreneur and because he has a sort of he's kind of a tech nerd, his solution to the problem comes from the things that he can do. And it's a strange thing, but it's not so strange. I mean, the technology of the Shrouds exists. You could actually do that now. And I invite any of you who have entrepreneurial feelings, because, I mean, you could start with one grave in your backyard. You know, as a kind of demo. I like showing your apartment around. I think there would be some takers, you know? I think there would be some takers. And if I feel like not making any more movies, I might, well, you know, I might.
Just get the VC together and start it.
Gravetech is a good, you know, it's a good brand.
Would you own a restaurant too? Would you actually move that into? Because I love the perversity of people eating next to a cemetery. The idea that, you know, once you've had this heart-wrenching moment with your loved ones, you know, we have some apps. There's some things for you. Would you go the whole way, or is that just the worst thing you could imagine?
I don't know. I mean, it's an alternative to actually getting into the box. You know, that's the alternative, and it does have drawbacks. But anyway, it's a different kind of. and I did think that in a strange way, you know, I've been watching, I mean, during the pandemic and so on, but watching a lot of old movies, and I came to the feeling that cinema is a graveyard, you know, cinema is a cemetery. All of the movies I was watching, everybody who was involved with making those movies is dead. And so in a strange way, the grave text cemetery is a new form of cinema, you know. The cinema of the cemetery.
Captive audience, captive subjects. Captive audience, captive subjects.
Sure.
I was just trying to get out of this. Turn to the audience. I'm sure you'll have questions as well, and I apologize in advance. The spotlight is blinding, and I will repeat the question so everyone can hear it. Yes, gentleman up there waving like he's trying to land an airplane. I can see you. He did.
And I went to it, and at the introduction you said that the reason you did this was alleged science fiction anyway. The reason you did it is you wanted to see some movies you couldn't normally see, and this is the way you were going to do it. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
Did everybody hear the question? Okay. I will repeat it. In 1983, David Cronenberg curated, I have to refer to you by your full name, David Cronenberg curated a science fiction series within what was then the Festival of Festivals and what is now TIFF, under the idea that life is pretty much science fictional as we were. And Taxi Driver was in there, if I remember correctly.
I think Vampire was there too.
And Vampire, and these are films that are effectively science fiction within the real world. They just push things a little bit further, which of course is exactly what films like The Shrouds do. It's all possible, but then we go somewhere else. And the question was, do you remember that? And I'm going to add something, because he said yes, which is, what else would you add now? Are there new films that you would consider?
Well, there are many reasons that you might make a film, and that's one of them. I'm not really obsessed with genre, you know. It occurred to me that it was always a matter of marketing. You know, if your film's a horror film, you know how to sell it, and you know what audience you might have for it. If it's a mob film, if it's a gangster film, you have once again the same thing. But it's more interesting when you have a film like Crash, you have a film like Naked Lunch, or Dead Ringers, or The Shrouds. Really, what genre are they? You know, they don't really need to be in a genre. So I don't really. That was an observation that I made, but I don't really think it doesn't really help you to create the movie thinking genre, in my opinion, anyway.
I mean, you're at the point now where you are your own genre, because people will show up for David Cronenberg's whatever I just did.
Yeah. I don't know if there are billions of people who want it. There's some, they're all here. You're all here. This is it. But it's lovely.
Is there another? There's someone down front.
Hi, Mr. Cronenberg. I love your films. One constant that I noticed is Howard Shore's great score. Can you please speak on your collaboration with Howard Shore?
The question was about Howard Shore's score being a constant since. What was the first
Yes,
one?
I mean, I think he's done all of my movies that had. My first couple of movies, we couldn't afford original music, so it was what they call drop needle music. You could buy the rights to certain scores, and for a small fee, you could use them in your movies. In fact, I remember one of my first movies, Shivers of Rabbit. There was a bit of music that I later saw on a TV commercial for some product, because they had also bought the rights to that. So with The Brood was the first time I had enough money in a budget to have an actual score composed, and it was Howard, who is a Toronto guy. He lives in Tuxedo, New York now, but he and I were friends in Toronto many years ago, and it's been a wonderful collaboration. I think the only movie that I did from after that that didn't have a score by Howard was The Dead Zone, which had to do a lot with the politics surrounding the Dino De Laurentiis organization and so on. And so Howard wasn't able to do the music for that. It has a lovely score, but it's not Howard's score. But the rest of the films that I've done have all been scored by Howard. And part of it is, I mean, it's very difficult to talk about music because it's so emotional and so non-verbal and so on. And Howard and I, we really got to the point where we didn't have to speak very much. I mean, he would just send me ideas that he had, and of course that's so much easier now with the internet. He can send you clips of music that he thinks might work for different scenes, and we can sort of discuss it very specifically. But it's sort of preternatural. I mean, he has such an intuition about what should happen musically. We always felt that often movie music is composed out of fear. You know, the fear that the audience won't get it, the fear that they won't understand that this is a funny moment, so you have funny music, or that this is a scary moment, so we'll have scary music. And we always felt that you could do a lot more with music than just enhance what's already there. And that it could be another level of discourse, of emotion, of thought that could be added to a scene that wasn't there without the music. And that's what we continue to do. And we've gotten kind of scarily efficient in terms, we don't have to talk a lot during the course of working on what music and where it should go. It's a lovely collaboration.
We have time for one more question, and I noticed nobody in the balcony has had a shot yet. Oh, I think there's someone with their arm raised. Wave your arm all the way at the top.
Hi.
Belt it out.
Ooh, hi, David. Thank you so much for coming to TIFF. I know we are all so grateful that you were able to showcase the Shrouds at TIFF. Like was mentioned earlier, with Crimes of the Future having like the similar themes with like modifying the body, this is more about like the decaying of the body. What I was wondering was, would you consider this like a spiritual sequel to Crimes of the Future?
Would you consider this, given that both films are about the modification of the body and the deterioration of the body, in this case, would you consider The Shrouds a spiritual sequel to Crimes of the Future?
I haven't thought of it that way, I must confess. Because, I mean, I think there are themes, this sort of body is reality kind of approach to life in general, and so to my art, I think you can find it everywhere in movies, even ones that you might be surprised to think about that way, like History of Violence and Eastern Promises, for example, and even A Dangerous Method, you know. So I wouldn't think of it so directly that way, but you are welcome to think of it that way.
Thank you, David.
We would talk about interpretations of the ending, and we all have our theories. But you had said it's perfectly fine for people to go out of this film thinking whatever they want to think about what it means. It's the nature.
Oh no, there's only one right answer. And I'm going to give it to you, and that's it. You can't think anything else about it. What are you asking me? No.
Oh, you're not going to do it. I know that.
I'm not going to do it. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Woo!
Thank you all for coming. We will see you at the next thing. David Cronenberg, everyone.